Welcome to my channel. I'm Tiffany, a retired librarian turned homeschool mom. And in this video, we're going to tackle Harry Potter. More specifically, this is an introduction to me covering the books and the films. So, why am I covering Harry Potter? Well, in my experience, looking at book blogging and following homeschool Facebook groups, particularly a secular one, Harry Potter is still recommended and it's still being read. In my experience working in the public library, Harry Potter is still very popular with children. So I think it's necessary to at least look at it. And I enjoyed them for what they were. I read them, I believe, starting in 2001. I was about 17 at the time. You can now deduct my age here. I'm in my late 30s. I was dragged into the film, had no interest in it. It's a decent movie. I'll cover that in a different video. And my sister borrowed the first 4 books, that's all that was out at the time, from the library. I had nothing to read and was bored. And I read the books. And they were intriguing. To be clear, I was into what Harry Potter is at the time. And I still enjoy that type of story. It covers some basic themes. It's British boarding school fiction, which is something I was definitely into. Both British and boarding schools. Had a very obsession with boarding schools. Probably because my home life kind of sucked. Wanting to get away. It's also a hero story, which is very, very popular. I mean, among young adults, teens, even people in their 20s. Basically, we're coming of age, and everybody a lot of people, we want to have purpose in our lives. And again, there are also pretty common themes in this type of genre, and this look at basically targeting this audience, which is young adults, coming of age novels. You're targeting people who are coming of age, therefore they're interested in their stories being told, and they're also interested in finding their place. So that's the other thing that's very common with this book series and books like it, or at least of these themes. There's a lot of better books than this. But where you feel marginalized, a lot of teenagers do. I did, even in my late teens, early 20s. You're trying to find the community where you fit. And that's what Harry Potter does. I mean, he grows up for the first 11 years of his life in a family that he's outcasted from, he's treated badly, and then he finds out he's this wizard and this important person and has this whole magical world where he's loved and accepted for who he is, and again, he's important because he's a big hero. But that's appealing to a lot of people. That type of story is very, very appealing. You find it in another far much better author, which is Rick Riordan, who, one, a better person, two, a better author, two, far more creative than Harry Potter. The films that they did were bad. He even admits that. They're very, very bad. I think they're trying to fix that now. But his books are very similar, and yes, I will cover them. I've read the first set that he did. So, but Harry Potter was a phenomenon because it clicked these boxes. I mean, it clicked the boxes for me too. I enjoy them. I admit that I enjoyed the first 4 books better than I enjoyed the latter 3, which I think is not uncommon because she kind of goes off the rails, becomes crazy mad with power, possibly, with the last 3 books. I admit book 5 ended up in my closet after I finished reading it because I could not stand it. So I skimmed through book 6 and mostly of book 7 just because, one, they got really, really long and convoluted. So I will try to cover them again. My husband's read them all. I think I got him to read my copies at some point prior to J.K. Rowling blowing up. So, and that's the other thing. J.K. Rowling is not a good person. She's a very misguided person. She's trying to do good, but she's very, very afraid of the world, in a sense. She doesn't like change, which is possibly why she's writing boarding school fiction, which is very Jane Austen, which apparently is what she was inspired by. You can also see a lot of Roald Dahl, which are, again, very much older authors. So she's kind of afraid of trans people for some reason. She thinks they want something to do with her. Well, they do. They were very, very fond of her. They loved her books. And her books share a place on the typical American Library Association's banned books list, usually in the top 10, with a whole bunch of LGBTQ books. And apparently The Handmaid's Tale. Those are kind of the things that are ending up on there. So, but yeah, when all that Twitter nonsense and her defending bigotry kind of came out, it made a very, very big mess. And she was very, very stupid to say that. I mean, yes, you can think it all you want, but you're a public figure who writes children's books. I know you're writing weird mysteries, but they're probably not very good. From what I've heard, they're not very good. They're kind of pointless. A more recent one was really, really stupid and very cliche and very formulaic, as those are. But, yeah, so how do you handle that when you're dealing with Harry Potter? Well, the best way to do it is don't buy her books now. You don't have to. One, you can borrow from the library. Two, you can buy them used from your library, because a lot of times their book sales, libraries have book sales which support their programs. And yeah, that's where your donated books typically go in a lot of places, particularly the bigger cities, mine in particular. And yes, people give the Harry Potter books because they grow out of them, they're getting rid of them, people don't like J.K. Rowling anymore. So your library bookstore is used bookstore, and book sales are likely selling Harry Potter books on occasion. And you can support your library and their programs by doing that. And then used bookstores, same reason. People are getting rid of them, and they still sell. And you have people who still want to share the book series with their family, but don't want to support J.K. Rowling. So that's how you can do it. As for the films, one, you could probably still buy them used. I have an anniversary DVD list that my husband bought me for Christmas, our first Christmas together a couple years ago. You can probably buy them used. Two, I do not believe J.K. Rowling directly benefits from the films anymore, because she sold the film rights. So she has no say. She had no say in the films whatsoever. The only thing from a book called Harry: A History by, I can't remember who the author is. She was an editor for a website called The Leaky Cauldron. She wrote this book. From what she said, the deal she made with Warner Brothers, essentially she sold the rights, but essentially she had it as a part of her contract that they could not take her world and run with it. So they couldn't recreate other stories that she had not written, which is why she's involved with the, what on earth are they doing? The Fantastic Beasts nonsense. And yes, it's nonsense. She's not a script writer. It's nonsense. And that's the reason she has to be somewhat involved in the cursed child thing, because again, she owns the copyright to these characters. So, but with her films, they couldn't run with the creating new characters and new stories without her being involved. That was written into it. Again, she had no control over the film. She sold those film rights to the Harry Potter books specifically. She just didn't let go of control of her world, which is another thing I'll bring up that I found out in this Harry history. J.K. Rowling has a lot more common with Anne Rice than she does with, say, somebody like Rick Riordan, who's perfectly open to fan fiction. If J.K. Rowling was not writing for children, she probably would have been similar to Anne Rice. Anne Rice will, if you're not familiar with her, she does the Vampire Chronicles. She hates, at least in the beginning, she will sue, and her publisher will sue anybody who tried to write fan fiction because she hated it. J.K. Rowling, actually, according to this book, tried that. Problem is, the people who were writing fan fiction for Harry Potter books were like 12. So, yeah. It's a big difference of suing an adult to suing a child. Yeah, that has a tendency that it would affect your book sales. So she kind of gave up on that because it was early on and she wasn't a big name then. And by the time she is, it's out of her hands. So she probably could, but again, it would massively damage her brand. And at this point, it doesn't matter. There's fan fiction everywhere of Harry Potter, and people have, it's a whole big thing. And it still is, even among, I think, the LGBTQ community, they're split on this, but That's not my community, so it's not my place to say. From what I've been able to figure out, it's split, and people have different opinions because other things. If you want more detailed on kind of that, how to read books with the theory of death of the author and how J.K. Rowling does not apply, Lindsay Ellis does 2 videos, one specifically on death of the author, where she does it a little bit with John Green, who did the Fault in My Stars books, another great author, as is Lindsay Ellis. Axum Sense is a great book. She also does one specifically on the death of the author theory, as well as why J.K. Rowling does not apply. She does it far better than I do, as she's far more experienced than I am at doing YouTube, and she has a film studies degree, and I have a history degree, so and a library degree. But she does that better than I do. If you want a further explanation, I'll see if I can link it. Otherwise, go to her channel. Again, that's Lindsay Ellis. She's very good, and she explains this very, very well, and does quite a few more things that I actually enjoy. She's one of the YouTubers that I'm inspired by. But again, as a librarian and as a homeschool mom, Harry Potter is a decent book to read. I wouldn't recommend it for much younger than 10. And again, if you want to avoid supporting J.K. Rowling and her craziness and bigotry, and I'm terrified of my own shadow situation, and she has far too much money than she should. Don't buy them. Don't buy them new. Support your public libraries. Support your local used bookstores. It's a better place to spend your money. Or, like I do, I already own them. So, and yes, I do have some of the merchandise. I have a couple owls that was bought for me, for my daughter. I think I have a blanket. I do have a Mandrake sign on the back of my minivan. But again, J.K. Rowling can't trademark Mandrake. It's a plant. Yeah, it actually exists. You can look it up. The Mandrake does exist. It doesn't scream. It's not going to make you go deaf. It might be poisonous. But it does kind of look like, the root kind of looks like a baby. That's where she's inspired by it. But no, it doesn't scream. But she also, again, she can't copyright Mandrake because it's a thing. And it existed long before she did, or her books, for that matter. But that's why we're covering. I'm going to cover pretty much, I'm going to cover each book as they are. I'm going to cover each film. The books are better. In most cases, that's the way. The books are better. So that's kind of it for this introduction. Again, I'm going to cover all of the books, all 8 films. I'm probably not going to go into huge detail into the last 3 because I don't know them that well, because I didn't enjoy them. I found them boring. I'm dyslexic, so why some people found J.K. Rowling's writing fantastic and easy to read, I got bored with the last 3 books. So, but again, that's it for this introduction, and look forward to me reviewing the rest of the Harry Potter stuff. Check out my homeschooling videos, my other book reviews, of which I have quite a few, and like and subscribe if you want to see more of my library, my book reviews, my travel reviews, my homeschooling stuff. So thank you.